Welcome to BookTalks Native, where you learn English by listening to native speakers and learn life lessons from great books.
That's right. And today we're going to explore a really famous book, maybe even a bit controversial.
Definitely controversial. It's The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli.
Yeah, this book is essentially like a guide for rulers on how to grab power and, crucially, how to keep it.
Written way back, wasn't it? Early 16th century Italy.
Exactly. Machiavelli actually wrote it for Lorenzo de' Medici, a big shot ruler in Florence back then. He was sort of offering up his political know-how.
It's not a huge book, but it's dense, right?
Oh.
Packed with ideas about different kinds of states, ruling them, conquering them.
And what qualities a ruler or prince should ideally have, or perhaps practically have.
Good point. And just a reminder for everyone listening, we'll be speaking, pretty slowly and clearly to help you follow along and boost your English.
Okay, so where does Machiavelli even begin? How does he categorize power structure?
Well, he starts off pretty straightforwardly. He says, look, there are basically republics and there are monarchies. Simple enough.
But then he dives deeper into monarchies. He splits them into hereditary ones passed down in the family, and new ones.
And these new monarchies are interesting. He breaks them down again. Some are totally new.
Like Francesco Sforza grabbing Milan. Started from scratch, basically.
Right. And others are territories added onto an existing state. He gives the example of the King of Spain taking Naples, adding it to his kingdom.
So you've got inherited power, completely new power, and then this kind of bolt-on power. What does he say about those added territories, the mixed ones?
That's where he says things get tricky. Mixed monarchies, he argues, are much harder to rule.
Why is that? What's the core problem?
Well, people in a newly taken territory often expect things to get better under the new boss.
Sure, that makes sense. Hope for improvement.
But Machiavelli says they often find things actually get worse. And that disappointment, it leads straight to rebellion.
Okay. So the very act of taking over causes problems. You bring your army, there are injustices, people get upset.
Exactly. And he also points out it's hard to keep the friends who helped you get power happy. You can't always give them everything they expected.
That's a tough spot. You need local support, but you've probably alienated some locals and maybe disappointed your allies.
Precisely. He uses Louis XII of France as a key example. Took Milan, lost it, took it again, lost it again.
Why did he lose it so quickly?
Because the Milanese initially welcomed him, hoping for benefits. But when those didn't really appear and they felt the downsides of French rule, they were quick to support the old Duke, Ludovico, coming back.
So the lesson is managing expectations and dealing with the immediate aftermath of taking power is absolutely critical.
Yeah, definitely. What about situations where the new territory is really different language, different culture?
Oh, he says that's extremely difficult. Very hard to hold on to.
Does he offer any solutions?
His number one solution is pretty direct. The ruler needs to actually go and live there.
Pack your bags and move in.
Basically, yes. Like the Turkish Sultan did in Greece, he suggests. Being physically present does a couple of things.
Like what?
Well, first, you can spot trouble, potential rebellions much earlier and nip them in the bud.
Okay, direct oversight.
And second, it stops your own officials on the ground from, getting out of hand, plundering the place. The locals see the top ruler is right there.
Makes sense. It builds some stability or at least accountability.
Yeah.
What about dealing with the neighbors in this new territory?
Right, the external picture. Machiavelli has a clear strategy for that too.
Yes.
You need to manage the neighborhood carefully, befriend the weaker neighbors, but crucially, don't let them get too strong.
Okay, keep them close, but not too powerful.
Exactly, and the stronger neighbors. You should actively try to undermine them, weaken their influence.
And keep outside powers out.
Absolutely. Don't let any other major external ruler gain a foothold or influence in the area. It's all about controlling the regional power balance.
He uses the Romans in Greece as an example here, right?
Perfect example. They befriended the weaker leagues like the Achaeans, undermined the powerful Macedonians, and kicked out Antiochus, another external power. Very strategic.
It sounds like a constant game of chess.
Yeah.
Now, what if you conquer a city that's used to running itself, like a free city?
He gives 3 options for that. 1, just destroy it.
Harsh.
2, go live there yourself, like we just discussed. Or 3, let them keep their own laws, but you tax them and install a friendly local government and oligarchy.
Which one does he think is best? Or safest, maybe?
Safest. He's pretty blunt. The only really secure way, long-term, is to destroy it.
Why so extreme?
Because, he argues, the memory of their old freedom and their institutions will always be there. It's a seed for future rebellion. He points to Pisa constantly rebelling against Florence even after 100 years. That desire for freedom doesn't just vanish.
Wow. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, how do new rulers get power in the first place? Is it skill or luck?
Machiavelli says it's basically down to one or the other, their ability, skill, prowess, or fortuna, which is luck, fortune, opportunity.
Does he favor one?
He acknowledges luck plays a part, obviously, but he strongly believes that rulers who rely more on their own abilities, their virtue, tend to build something more lasting.
And relying less on luck means you have to be more hands-on.
Yeah, especially if you're building a completely new state. You're forced to be present to establish your authority directly. He contrasts Francesco Sforza, who gained Milan through skill and held it.
Against Caesar Borgia.
Exactly. Borgia got his power mainly through his father, the Pope. He was capable, Machiavelli admits, and tried hard to build a solid foundation. But when his father died, when his luck ran out, his power collapsed pretty quickly.
So, opportunity might get you started, but skill is what keeps you there. This leads nicely into military matters. He has strong opinions about armies, especially mercenary.
Oh, strong is putting it mildly. He absolutely tears into mercenary and auxiliary forces troops borrowed from another ruler. He calls them useless and dangerous.
Why so negative?
He paints them as totally unreliable. They're ambitious for themselves, not loyal to you, undisciplined, quarrelsome, brave when they're with their friends, but cowards against the enemy.
Sounds like a terrible investment.
He says they have no fear of God, no loyalty to men. They basically plunder you in peacetime and let the enemy plunder you in wartime. Ruin is inevitable with them.
So what's the alternative?
Your own army, made up of your own subjects, citizens, or dependents, people who actually have a stake in defending the state. He gives tons of examples of states that ran into trouble using mercenaries: Carthage, Thebes, Italian city-states like Milan, Florence, Venice.
And he admired rulers who built their own forces.
Yes, like Charles VII of France, who established a national army. For Machiavelli, this is paramount.
What should a ruler focus on then?
War. The art of war, its organization, its discipline, that should be a ruler's main thought, their primary profession. He says neglecting this is the surest way to lose your state.
Even in peacetime.
Especially in peacetime, he says rulers need to train constantly. Physically, like through hunting, which teaches you the terrain.
And mentally.
Mentally, by studying geography, understanding landscapes, and crucially, studying history, reading about great military leaders and how they acted.
He mentions Philip Pullman, right? The Euclidean leader.
Yeah, as someone who was always thinking about military strategy, even when just walking in the countryside with friends, always asking, what if the enemy were here? How would we respond?
And he suggests modeling yourself on great figures from the past.
Absolutely. Like Alexander the Great modeled himself on Achilles, Caesar on Alexander, Scipio on Cyrus. Study and emulate the best.
Okay, this intense focus leads to maybe his most famous piece of advice. Is it better to be feared or loved?
Ah, yes. The classic question. His answer is pretty stark.
Which is?
Ideally, you'd be both. But since that's really difficult to achieve, if you have to choose, it's much safer to be feared than loved.
Why did he land on feared?
It comes down to his view of human nature, which is, well, not very optimistic. He says people are generally ungrateful, fickle, liars, deceivers. They shy away from danger and are greedy for gain.
Ouch.
So love, he argues, is held together by a chain of obligation. But because people are inherently self-interested, they'll break that chain whenever it suits them.
But fear?
Fear is maintained by a dread of punishment. And that, he says, never fails. People might forget favors, but they don't forget pain or the threat of it.
That's a really pragmatic, maybe even cynical view of managing people. Does this extend to keeping promises?
It absolutely does. He argues that a wise ruler cannot and should not keep his word when doing so is to his disadvantage, or when the reasons that made him promise no longer exist.
So just break your promises if you need to.
Essentially, yes, because he reasons, if everyone else is basically untrustworthy and likely to break their promises to you, why should you be the only one holding to them?
But shouldn't a ruler seem trustworthy?
Seem trustworthy, yes, that's key. A ruler needs to appear to have all the good qualities: mercy, faithfulness, humanity, honesty, religiousness. But
be ready to act the complete opposite way if the situation demands it.
Exactly. Be prepared to enter into evil when necessary. He says people judge more by appearances and by the final outcome. If you win and maintain your state, the means will always be judged honorable.
That's deeply controversial, isn't it? The ends justify the means, essentially.
That's the common interpretation, and yes, it's the core of what makes The Prince so debated. But he does add a crucial caveat about perception. While being feared is good, being hated is disastrous.
So fear is okay, hatred is bad. How do you avoid hatred?
Mainly by keeping your hands off your subjects' property and the honor of their women. As long as you don't take their stuff or disgrace their families, he thinks most people will live contentedly.
And avoiding contempt is also important. Being despised.
Yes. Being seen as fickle, frivolous, effeminate, cowardly, or indecisive makes you contemptible. A ruler needs to project gravity, courage, and strength.
Why is avoiding hatred and contempt so vital?
Because if the people hate or despise you, conspiracies become much more dangerous. A conspirator usually thinks killing the ruler will please the people. But if they know the people actually like or respect the ruler, they won't dare try it.
So popular support, or at least the absence of popular hatred, is a kind of shield.
A very important one. He uses the example of Annibale Bentivogli in Bologna. He was assassinated by rivals, the Canescis, but the people rose up, killed the Canescis, and supported the Bentivogli family because they hadn't hated Annibale.
Interesting. He also talks about the specific problems Roman emperors had, doesn't he? Balancing the army and the people.
Right, that was a unique challenge. The soldiers often wanted aggressive, even cruel leaders who would let them plunder. But the people wanted peace and moderation. Pleasing both was incredibly difficult.
And new emperors often needed the army more.
Usually, yes. They relied on the soldiers for their power, so they often had to keep the army happy, sometimes at the expense of the people.
He praises Emperor Severus for managing this.
He does. He says Severus knew how to play both the fox cunning and the lion forceful. He kept the soldiers satisfied while impressing or terrifying the people enough to maintain control.
But others failed.
Many failed, like Commodus, Maximinus, Pertinax, Alexander Severus. They ended up either hated by the people or despised by the soldiers, or both, and were overthrown. It was a treacherous balancing act.
Okay, let's switch tracks slightly. What about physical defenses like fortresses? Are they a good idea?
His answer is typically Machiavellian. It depends.
No simple yes or no.
Nope. He says fortresses can be useful or harmful depending on the circumstances. Sometimes they help secure your state against external enemies or internal unrest.
But sometimes they're bad.
Yes. If the people hate you, a fortress might protect you from them, but it also becomes a symbol of oppression and might not save you if a foreign power intervenes. He even gives examples of rulers who tore down fortresses after regaining power, believing loyalty was a better defense.
So, again, it comes back to the relationship with your people and the overall situation. What about taking sides in conflicts between neighbors? Should a ruler stay neutral?
Absolutely not, according to Machiavelli. He argues that neutrality is almost always a bad policy. It's always better to declare yourself openly for one side or the other.
Why is that? Isn't neutrality safer sometimes?
He thinks it leaves you exposed. If you stay neutral, the winner won't feel any obligation to you and might see you as easy prey later. And the loser won't help you because you didn't help them. You end up disliked by both.
So picking a side, even if your side loses, is better.
Yes. If your ally wins, they're indebted to you. If your ally loses, they'll still see you as a friend and might help you in the future if they recover. You share their fate, good or bad, but you gain commitment.
He uses a Roman example for this too, doesn't he?
Right. When Antiochus tried to get the Achaeans in Greece to stay neutral in his war against Rome, the Roman envoy told them neutrality was the worst possible choice, leaving them prizes for the victor.
Okay, so be decisive in foreign policy. What about advisors? How important is good counsel?
Critically important, but just having advisors isn't enough. The ruler needs the wisdom to recognize good advice and, crucially, to make the advisors feel comfortable giving honest opinions.
How does he categorize a ruler's own intelligence in this?
He has this famous classification of minds. He says there are 3 kinds. First, those who understand things by themselves, excellent. Second, those who can understand what others understand, good. And third, those who understand nothing at all, useless.
So a ruler needs to be at least in that second category, able to judge advice.
Yes, at a minimum. A ruler who can't judge advice is lost. And he warns against flatterers. You need advisors who will tell you the truth, but only when you ask. And you need to make it clear you won't be offended.
That requires a lot of judgment from the ruler. He then looks at why Italian rulers of his time were losing their states. What was his diagnosis?
His main criticism was their failure to prepare during times of peace. They enjoyed the good times and didn't think about potential future storms. So when trouble hit,
They ran away.
Many did, yes. They fled instead of defending themselves, often hoping that people would get fed up with the conquerors and call them back. Machiavelli thought this was a weak and unreliable strategy.
What should they have done?
Build their own strength, rely on their own virtue, and prepare their own defenses. Good defenses, he says, are the ones that depend on yourself and your own ability. He contrasts them with someone like Philip of Macedon, not Alexander's father, a later one who held out against the Romans for years because he was a capable military leader who knew how to secure the people and the nobles.
So preparation and self-reliance are key themes throughout. What about the role of luck, or fortuna, overall?
He admits fortune controls maybe half of our actions, but he insists the other half is up to us, to our foresight and ability to adapt.
Adaptability is important then.
Very. He believes rulers succeed when their methods match the times. If you're cautious when boldness is needed, you fail, and vice versa. The problem is, it's hard for people to change their nature.
And he has that famous comparison for fortune.
Yes, the rather controversial one, where he compares fortune to a woman. He says because fortune is changeable, it's better to be impulsive and bold than cautious. Because fortune, like a woman, is more often won over by impetuous and aggressive men.
Definitely a product of its time, that analogy. And how does the book end?
It ends with this incredibly passionate call to action. An appeal to Lorenzo de' Medici, or some great Italian leader, to rise up.
Rise up and do what?
To seize the opportunity, unite Italy, and liberate it from the barbarians, the foreign powers like France and Spain who were dominating the peninsula. He argues that Italy is in a desperate state, crushed and divided, similar to the Israelites in Egypt or the Persians under the Medes.
So he sees a moment of crisis as an opportunity for a great leader.
Exactly. He believes the time is ripe for a unifier, someone with the virtue to harness the situation and create a strong, independent Italian state. It's a very patriotic and hopeful ending, quite different in tone from much of the preceding clinical analysis.
It really is. So that gives us a pretty comprehensive look into the core ideas of Machiavelli's The Prince. It's definitely a book that makes you think.
For sure. It raises fundamental questions about power, leadership, ethics, and just how the world perhaps really operates, especially in politics.
What do you, our listeners, think about Machiavelli's advice? Is it timeless wisdom, dangerous cynicism, or maybe something in between? Still relevant today? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
We'd genuinely love to hear your take on it.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive and want to learn more about great books while improving your English, please do like this recording, leave a comment, share it with others, and subscribe to BookTalks Native.
Your support really helps us keep these conversations going.
Thank you all so much for listening today. We wish you good health, and we hope you'll join us for our next discussion.